Okay, so yes, for domain and range, you got to think alphabetical order. Which letter comes first, domain or range, D or R? D comes before R, just like X comes before Y, if you ever get confused on that. D comes before R, just like X comes before Y. Domain describes all of your X values, range is all of your Y values. Now with domain and range, we worked with open and closed circles. If it's an open circle, it's just a circle not filled in. Closed circle, it is filled in. What did we use to help us remember when to fill it in or not, or when it's filled in or not? The line. We said if the inequality is underlined, we think of the line filling in the bubble. The line fills in the bubble. Line fills bubble. Line's what fills in the bubble. Okay. We also had this basic format that helped us write or notate the domain and range. What was the very first thing that we had to fill in the middle? What did we have to fill in the middle? X or Y, X or Y. Obviously X for domain, and we use a Y for range. X for domain, Y for range. Now, we had numbers on either side of these, on the left and on the right side. What kind of numbers? How did we set up those numbers? We don't write X equals on this side. No, never. What kind of numbers am I going to put on the left side? What kind of numbers do I put on the right side? We write our numbers from what to what? Least to greatest. So in this case, we're thinking minimum to maximum point. Minimum point to the maximum point. Minimum means your low number to your high number. Your low number and your high number. Ready? Domain. The very first thing we fill in is what? X. X in the middle. X for our X values. Now our X values come from the X axis. Since we have to write from the lowest to the highest, where do we find our lowest number on the X axis? On the left side. So my minimum side is on the left. My maximum side is on the right. That means to notate or to find the boundaries of the domain. Domain and range is all about finding the limitations, finding how far, what are our boundaries. So I'm going to put my pencil, pen, whatever it is, on the parabola, and I'm going to go as far as I can to the left because my lowest point is on the left, and see what number it lines up with. And it lines up with what number? -2. That's why we're color coding. Right now, we're trying to find the domain. So we're going to line it up with the yellow line. Now, what kind of circle do we see? What kind of end point do we have? It's closed. So that means we have to underline it. Maximum point. Maximum point will be on the right side. So I'm going to trace it all the way to the right side. I have a closed circle once again. Make sure you underline it. And that lines up with the number 4. Okay. Now, once we get to the STAR test, even if you don't remember how to do domain and range, 90% of the time, 2 of those answer choices are going to be the wrong variable. So as long as you can remember that the domain is X values and the range is what? Y values, you can at least give yourself a 50-50 chance at getting that question. Okay. Don't make that mistake, or don't let me see that you end up picking Y when the question is clearly asking for the domain. Don't make that stupid mistake. Okay. All right. Range. We're still writing from lowest to highest, minimum to maximum, smallest to largest. Where is my lowest point on my y-axis. What's my lowest point on my y-axis? Where? Location. On the bottom. Minimum is on the bottom. First, I'm trying to label my minimum and my maximum so I know where to look. Because I know that my minimum is on the left, my maximum on the right. First, you have to figure out where to look, and then you can find the numbers. Now, if I go to the very bottom of my parabola, we have two endpoints, but they both line up at the same number, so no big deal there. They both line up at what number? -6. And both of those are closed circles. So I don't have to worry about, is it open, is it closed, do I underline, do I not? They're both closed. Now, even though a lot of students like to fixate or like to focus only on the points, but even though these two are my ends, this is not the highest that the parabola goes. It is the lowest, but it's not the highest. The highest that the parabola actually goes is what? To a +3. And unless you physically see a gap, which you won't, not in Algebra 1, you will not see a gap. It's considered to be closed. No gap equals closed circle. If there's no gap, it's closed. And there's my range. That is the full answer for the range. Questions on this one? When it starts getting difficult is when you start to see arrows. It starts to get difficult when you start to see arrows. Okay, so before we actually find the domain and range of this one, let's go back over all of that. Arrow, if I see an arrow, what does that indicate? It indicates that the graph is going to continue to go, like it's going to keep going. And what symbol do we use whenever we come across an arrow? Infinity, infinite. Another thing that we could possibly run into, what if once I'm done filling in my domain and range, what if I end up with infinite or infinity on both sides? What does that indicate as my final answer? All real numbers. I'm just going to put, since there's not a lot of space, AR numbers. We are going to write it out at least one time. All real numbers. If you end up with infinity on both sides, that means it's all real numbers. Because it's going towards the negative side. You'll see in a little bit. Everybody ready? All right, domain, here we go. What's the first thing you fill in? X. We got to figure out where our minimum and maximum are coming from. Where is my smallest number on my x-axis? Where is my smallest number on the x-axis? On the left side. So I'm going to write minimum. At least for your notes, you're not going to have to write this on your assignment, but I do want to see this on the notes. Because when you come over to ask me a question, if I don't see minimum, maximum, I'm going to say you didn't even copy it correctly. Okay, so we always go from least to greatest. We go from the minimum. Minimum, meaning the left side. If I go to the left side, what do I come across? An arrow. What does an arrow indicate? Infinity. And those are always considered closed circle. That's something I forgot to write. Let me write it up here. Infinite is considered a closed circle. Now it is going toward the negative side, so you can not technically have to, but you can put a negative infinity on that. Okay. Maximum, that means now I have to go to the right. And what do I come across? An arrow indicates infinity. We have we have infinite signs on both sides. So what does that mean? And for this one, we can do it the short way the rest of the time, but for this one, I want you to write it out, all real numbers. All real numbers. Now, Most students, whenever they notice that the domain is all real numbers, they automatically think that the range is also all real numbers, but that is not the case. Range, what do we fill in the middle? They can both be all real numbers, but not in this case. Where is my minimum on the y-axis? At the bottom. And where's my maximum? So that means we have to start where? At the bottom. So how low does the parabola go? -4. -4. Once again, no gap, closed, underline. Once I go to the top, I come across two arrows, but they both line up with that +6, but an arrow once again indicates what? That it keeps going towards infinity. What do you guys remember about this answer, this type of answer, or coming across this type of answer? What's up?
Oh, yeah, don't you gotta flip it?
Why would you have to flip it?
Because
What would you flip?
the y is in the -4.
The y and the -4, because on the STAR test, your answer choices will always have the variable in the front. They will have the variable in the front. So if I flip the -4 and the y, what else do I have to flip?
The sign.
The sign, the symbol. Now with domain and range, they have started to include a lot of sentences as answer choices instead of just the numbers and the symbols. So we're going to practice today writing it out, okay? When I ended up flipping this, technically it's like that infinity symbol is also over here, okay? What does infinity typically indicate? What?
It never stops.
In words,
It continues.
in words, all real numbers, all real numbers. So because technically my infinity symbol is now on the left side, they're going to start off the sentence as writing all real numbers. And you must write this down. We're going to practice writing it out, all real numbers. And then the rest of the sentence is going to come from the symbol with the number. What symbol is this? Greater than. All real numbers greater than. The underline is said as read as what? Equal to, greater than, or equal to -4. So if you come across a domain and range question in sentence form, this is how it will be written. All real numbers comes from having that infinity symbol in the front. Greater than or equal to comes from having not that symbol, that's less than, my bad. Greater than or equal to -4. Okay. Go wash your face. Ready? Domain. That wasn't a question. Domain. What do we fill in the middle? X. Where is our minimum? On what side? Left. And our maximum is on the right. If I go to the left side of the parabola, I'm going to start calling names. Bree, what do I see on the left side of the parabola? Okay. So that indicates infinite. Underline. Could be negative. Jason, what about on the right side? And what does an arrow mean? Infinite, underline. Neftali, so since I have two infinites on either side, what does that mean? That means our response or our answer is going to be all real numbers. Now I'm going to use the short way. We've already written it out the long way. I'm just going to use the short way from now on. Ready? What's the first thing that I fill in the middle for the range? y. Where is my minimum? And the maximum? Okay. So if I go to the bottom of my parabola, Yesenia, what do I get? The bottom of my parabola, the minimum. What do I see? Okay, so both of those line up with -5, but what are they? What is this? What is this? What's the name of the shape? What is it? It's an arrow. And what is an arrow? How do we write an arrow over here? Infinity, yeah. All right, that's my minimum. Maximum goes on the right side. So now we're thinking about how high does my parabola go? Melissa? 4. Wait for me to come on. No gap? So underline it, 4. Do we have to flip this answer? No, this one stays the same, okay? But now let's practice writing it. Technically, it starts with what? Okay, I'm gonna write it down here. I'm gonna put AR numbers, all real numbers. That comes from the infinity symbol. And then now you look at the symbol next to the number. What is that? Less than or equal to. Less than or equal to because it is underlined. Less than or equal to because it's underlined, 4. All real numbers comes from the infinity symbol. Less than or equal to the symbol next to the 4. Get it? Questions on that? On how to notice it written out? Okay. Ready? Domain. What do you put in the middle? X. Minimum on the left, maximum on the right. We start with the minimum. So if I go to the left side, Joshua, what does this line up with? -3.5. It lines up right down the middle. So we're just going to say -3.5. Do I have to underline it? Yes or no? No, it's an open circle. It's not filled in, so we don't underline. Rolando, what about the maximum? 1.5 because it's between the 1 and the 2. Do I underline it? No. Questions on that one? All right. What do we fill in the middle for the range? Minimum on the bottom, maximum on the top. All right. So my lowest point, how low does this parabola go, Aiden? How low does this one go? -1. Once again, no gap. It's considered closed. So -1, underline. How high does it go, Anthony? It goes up to the 5. Do I underline it? No, both of those are open circles. So I don't have to worry about, is it open? Is it closed? Do I underline? Do I not? Questions? Last graph. Here we go. What do I fill in the middle? X. Minimum on the left, maximum on the right. Okay. If I go to the left side, Keandra, what do I get? It's an arrow, so arrow indicates infinity. All right, but when I go to the right, Alex, what's my boundary? What's my limit? Are you paying attention? What's my maximum? It lines up with the number 2. Do we underline, yes or no? No. Now, we already established, or we already know We've already gone back over the fact that we only keep the variable with the number. But this is one where the infinity or the infinite symbol is left out. So let's practice writing this out. How would you write this one out? All real numbers or equal to? Less than, just less than. Less than. It only has a less than symbol. That less than symbol is not underlined. So less than what? Less than 2. Come over here. Less than 2. All right. Range, we fill in the Y in the middle, minimum on the bottom, maximum on the top. All right. Tricky one. We're going to call on Angel. Angel, if I go to the very bottom of my parabola, what does it line up with? What's my minimum? Okay. My open circle lines up with the -5, but what do I have on the other side?
Oh, infinity.
Because even though this point stops at the -5, my arrow tells us that we're going to keep going. So technically the lowest point is -infinity. Okay. How high does it go, Yoselin? 4. No gap, closed circle. So we only keep the Y and the 4. Okay. How would I write that out? All real numbers less than or equal to 4. I have to repeat it because sometimes you can't hear it on the video. Less than or equal to 4. Or can you? Can you? Could you hear all the students in the background?
No.
So yeah. Questions on how to write these out? Okay. Tables. Tables. These are the ones that are just a little bit harder to understand. Okay. So first things first, if you come across a table, your domain will always be all real numbers. For tables, domain will always be all real numbers. Done. All real numbers. For tables, the domain will always be all real numbers. Range is the one that's a little bit harder to understand. And I can't show you until I actually put it side by side with its graph. So everybody ready? Okay. This is side by side with the graph, but you're not always going to be provided a graph. First things first, you have to understand that even though it has f of x here on the right side of the table, f of x is no different than writing a y. This part, I just need you guys to look, okay? Now, every graph is read. You read graphs from left to right. So if I were to start here on this point, what is happening to my parabola? It's going down. It's going down. And we get to our minimum and it no longer goes down. It starts to go where? Back up. So from left to right, it goes down, stops, goes back up. Everybody understand that? Let's look at our numbers, okay? From the 7 to the 2, what is happening? It's going which way? Is it increasing or decreasing? Decreasing, so it's going down. From 2 to -1, what's happening? Down, okay? From -1 to -2, decreasing. But what happens after that -2? How do you go from -2 to a -1? You start to increase, positive. What about from -1 to 2? Increase. And 2 to 7? Increase. So this -2 is representing, since it's going down and then goes back up, it represents our what? Our high point. If it goes down and then back up, it's a down and then back up, down to the bottom, down in the valley. It is a what? Low point. Wake up. Minimum. Low. Are we okay? Can I get some, at least some head nods from the crowd? You didn't get it? Then why'd you? Nobody's paying attention today. We're just asleep. And I need you guys to wake up. All right, so I'm going to show you how to draw your own sketch just based on a table. You can sketch this out. You can learn how to sketch this out. First of all, f of x is no different than having what here? What variable? A y. Because most people see the x and then they automatically think, oh, these are my x values, even though you clearly have an x by itself over here. These are just my y values. What is happening when we go from 9.5 to 1.5? Decrease. So I'm going to put a minus. What about from 1.5 to -1? Still decreasing. -1 to -3. Decrease. -3 to a -1. Now we're going back up. We're going back up, positive. And -1 to what should be a 1.5 is positive, increase. And then 1.5 to 9.5, positive, it increases. So we're going to sketch this parabola. We read it from left to right. We read it from top to bottom. At 9.5, I'm going to start my parabola. What happens? It starts to go which direction? Down, and then it ends up going back up to 9.5. Where does it turn? Where does it go from negative to positive? At the -3. So -3 is considered my minimum, my lowest point. My minimum, my lowest point. Does everybody understand that? Everybody knows how to find that. We're going to practice it on the next table. All right. Now that we've drawn or sketched our graph, let's fill in our format. So what do we put in the middle? Y. Minimum is what? Not the bottom number. The minimum is our -3. Minimum is our turning point. -3. It's still closed. And what is our maximum? Infinite. 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 We're assuming that it will be all real numbers, so there has to be arrows on both sides, okay? Do I have to flip this? Yep. We flip it around and it becomes y is what? Greater than or equal to -3. As a phrase, how would you write that out? All real numbers. Correct. All real numbers greater than or equal to -3. On the STAR test, all of your answer choices have the variable in the front. So you have to switch it, because if you switch it, then you will realize that the symbol also switch. If you leave it like this, then you will be tempted to pick the answer choice with the less than symbol. Okay. Example 7, what is the domain? All real numbers, it's a table. Don't have to worry about it. All real numbers. The hard part is doing the range. What do you put in the middle for the range? Y, okay? Now to figure out how to sketch it, that way I can actually draw, find the range for it. Sorry, I can't even think. Y'all are making me sleepy, just looking at you. We got to figure out what's happening to the values. How do you get from 27 to 33? You increase, positive. How do you get from 33 to 35? You increase, positive. From 35 to 33? Decrease. And from 33 to 27? Decrease, okay? So this is an example. I'm going to start with my 27 because we go from left to right. From that 27, what is happening? We're going in what direction? Up and then back down. Up and then back down to that 27. But what is my turning point? The number 35. And 35 is considered my, in this case, it's my maximum. It's my highest point because we went up and then down. We didn't go down and then up. We went up and then down. Everybody see the difference? Okay. So, Jason, what is my lowest? Infinity, Ms. Ramirez, I've been paying attention this whole time and I didn't fall asleep. Yes, infinity, closed. What is my highest point? What's my maximum? 35. Not 31, 35, closed, my bad. 35, closed. Do we flip it? Nope. All right, so how do we write it in word form? Less than or equal to 35. All right, on the assignment, I want you to practice. You are going to do the domain and range for all of them, but I want you to practice writing it out in word form. For number 1, you're going to do it for the range. Put a star next to it. Number 1, you're going to do it for the range. Number 4, you're going to do both domain and range. You're going to write it in that format and equation, in word form, sentence form. For number 5, just the range. Put a little star on it. For number 5, you're going to do it for just the range. And number 9 and 10, just the range. Now, every question does not ask for both domain and range. So just make sure you're paying attention to what they're asking for, okay?